would help pay for increased demands on critical rural services such as fire and emergency service. I'd like to add through impact fees, period.
I'm going to make that a motion.
That's my motion.
Is there a second?
You make the friendly amendment on that. That's not a bad idea, but I can only think through one thing at a time.
I'll second it if he adds some concurrency fees in there.
And concurrency fees, that's a friendly amendment.
Any discussion?
Actually, there's no concurrency fees. It's, concurrency requirements.
Requirements, I'll accept that.
Discussion?
Yeah. Again, I'm going to go back to the Roberts Rules. A motion, once it's made, has to be seconded.
He seconded.
But only with changes. I mean, there's a lot of back and forth going. We need to make a motion, have it seconded, and then friendly amendment belongs to the table, so friendly amendment has to be agreed upon by the group. So it's just a sticker. Everybody needs to be heard that way, but once a motion is made, it belongs.
Friendly amendment has to be voted on by the group?
It has to be agreed to. But once a motion is made, it belongs to the table.
Okay.
Not just by one person. One person can't just make a friendly amendment. So make your amendment, and then if there's a friendly one.
Yeah, okay. But you guys get to vote on the whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay, restate the motion.
The original motion, pursue measures through which new development would help pay for increased demands on critical rural services such as fire and emergency service through impact fees.
And I seconded that. And then I attempted to add a second, which I can do now. Yeah, I can do it. Okay, I can do now. And the second has to do with include concurrency requirements.
So I would accept that if the reading would be through impact fees and concurrency requirements.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
No. Okay, any other changes to page 8 of 29?
Abstained.
9 of 29.
I would like to revisit 8.
Okay. Commissioner Blisle.
Remember, we need to vote on 8 after we start.
And Mr. Bell, pay attention here because I may be out of line here. I would like to make the comment that one of the reasons that we recommended that change was to ensure that there wasn't a tax shift from the people doing changes to the country or to our county. A tax shift from them paying for their impacts back to everybody else. And so as a taxpayer, I guess I was just trying to be self-defensive in not paying for a shift, for that shift. All right. You're good.
Okay, the motion. Will you restate the motion?
Pursue measures through which new development help pay for increased demands on critical rural services such as fire and emergency service through impact fees and concurrency requirements.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
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 Just do that.
Okay, any other changes on 8? Any other changes on 8? Okay, so we're going to accept 8.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, on to 9.
No. Just go. I vote not to accept 8.
We're still on to 9.
Yeah, we're still on to 9.
We're still on to 9. Thank you.
Okay.
Any changes on 9 of 29? Commissioner Rainey.
I just have a question for staff. Would it be appropriate to address right to farm in this policy? Where is right to farm at in county policy?
Which one are you referring to?
Well, I'm not really referring to anything, but we talk a lot about agriculture, ensure business operations do not adversely impact adjacent residential, agricultural, and forest land. And I'm just wondering, do we have a right to farm policy in the county, and where is that addressed? Is it in zoning, comp plan?
I think it's in the agricultural section, in the resource section in the comprehensive plan. Samuel's looking it up right now.
Okay, I don't remember reading it, but.
Again, this rural section is dealing with the areas of the county that are not agriculture, that are not urban. It's everything else, but
They're adjacent.
But they can be adjacent. You're right.
Just a question.
Okay, are we good? Oh, Commissioner Belial?
We're on 929, right?
Yes.
We do have, excuse me, to answer the question, in another chapter in policy 8D2, it says affirm and build upon the right to farm ordinance in order to help curb pressures to convert farms to non-farm uses.
Okay.
Where is that?
Chapter 8.
It's in chapter 8, a different chapter. This is, we're talking about changes in chapter 2. It's not in what you're looking at. The question was, how do we address the right to farm issue, and that's where it is in chapter 8.
So in 2FF-3, this is not the place to ask the question, how do you do that? Or say, should it be in there somewhere, how you do that? I mean, ensure that, I mean, do we talk about buffers? Do we talk about right to farm? Do we talk about noise? Or, I mean, do we do any of that here, or do we do that somewhere else?
Well, we do have policy 2FF4, which talks about allow home-based occupations, cottage industries, small-scale tourist recreational uses throughout the rural area, provided they do not adversely affect the surrounding residential uses or rural character. 2FF3, ensure that business operations do not adversely impact adjacent residential, agricultural, forest land. These are general, but again, this is a general statement of policy. These are not the development regulations.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we add adjacent residential, agriculture, and forest land to 2FF-4.
Could you restate that, please?
Sure.
2FF3 incorporated into 2FF4?
Just adjacent residential, agriculture, and forest land to put that in there under effect, so that allow home-based occupations, cottage industry, and small-scale tourist and recreational uses throughout the rural area, provided they do not adversely affect adjacent agriculture or forest land, somewhere there.
So you want to delete impact and insert effect?
No, I want to make sure that agriculture and forest lands go into FF4. 2FF3 is fine, but it says down here that home base doesn't say anything about impacting agriculture or forest land, and they could easily be doing that.
Yeah, is there a term of art that is more appropriate for this type of impact or effect? I mean, I prefer impact to effect, but I'm not a drafter here, so.
I don't think it makes a lot of difference.
Well, we got to change one or the other, so which one do you want, impact or effect?
Just so you all know, I'm trying to capture your suggestions as you mention them up there, and so you can look to see if I'm capturing them accurately, and then if the motion fails, I'll just revert to the existing text.
Thank you, Sam.
Thanks, Sam.
Here, just a second.
Well, okay, if that's a motion, I'll second it.
There we go.
Should we read this restate?
I can't.
Restate the motion. And would you state the policy number?
Yeah, we're going to restate policy 2FF-4, and I got shorter because my seat just went down. I'm down. Got it? All right.
I'm there for you.
Perfect. I'm glad. So, allow home-based occupations, cottage industry, and small-scale tourist and recreational uses throughout the rural area, provided they do not adversely affect the surrounding residential.
Sammy's got it up on the board if you want to take a look at, see if that's what you're looking at.
Agriculture, forest land, or rural character.
And what was the change to that policy?
It's shown in red there.
The forest land.
Okay,
and the-
okay.
I'll second it.
All right.
Okay, we have a second. Any discussion?
Thank you, Sammy.
Commissioner Rainey.
I want to speak in support. I've seen rural lands impact commercial agriculture in negative ways and agriculture, so I support.
Yeah, I would
Commissioner
say,
Erickson?
yeah, I would say the same, that there's an awful lot of agriculture going on in the rural areas. And I think we need to support that. A lot of it's, smaller scale, but
Anyone else?
This,
Okay.
this could also be adjacent to ag land, so it doesn't have to be in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Any other changes to 9 of 29?
You just got to keep turning over rocks.
Okay, so do we approve 9 of 29? All in
Aye.
favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. 10, any changes, deletions?
Yeah, just
Commissioner Lesau.
yeah, in the underscored area up at the top there, a small proportion says per 5 or 10 acres, however, a small proportion has been developed. I believe that a small proportion have been developed under zoning. I think that should be have. Maybe not. If there's an English major in here to correct me, by all means.
I'd say singular. It's a proportion, one proportion.
Okay, I stand corrected, Professor. Policy 2GG-1, provide a variety of residential choices at rural densities which are compatible with the character of each of the rural areas. We need, I think, to flesh out the idea of what is a rural density. Again, we're getting back to this, county sets a standard of rural density as being R2. Or RR2. So I would suggest that we put a number in there so as for clarity and also for policy purposes. Provide a variety of residential choices at rural densities of 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres or more, which are compatible with the character of each of the rural areas. I think most people can agree that 5 and 10 acre plots are more rural than 1 and 2 acre plots.
Does the language in 2GG2 do that for you?
That doesn't work. And what about Weiser Lake? I mean, that doesn't fit. It's all 2 acres stuff. I'm not going 5 1 acres.
No.
Is there a motion?
I would like to include, okay, you're suggesting that rural designation is characterized by densities at or below 1 unit per 5 acres? No, it doesn't.
But, however, it goes on and says, while the large majority is at or below 1 per 5 acres, the rural designation may also include rural residential areas where higher densities have been established.
Still doesn't do it for me.
Is there a motion?
That's my motion.
Would you restate the motion, please?
Provide a variety of residential choices at rural densities of 1 unit per 5 acres or greater, which are compatible with the character of each of the rural areas.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
It is my opinion that that language would result in further low-density sprawl. So I'm going to speak against it.
Commissioner Honkoop?
The goal there, we're talking about goal 2GG and policy 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on is in support or explaining what the 2GG goal is. And retaining the traditional rural character is, I think, a key phrase in that goal. And the traditional rural character varies greatly by area. And where you can have a higher density area in some and a lower density area in some. By specifying that it be, 1 per 5, I think is that you're excluding then the traditional rural character of areas. I'm just going to pick one as the Wise Lake area. There are also existing developments off of Beard Road there. I can't remember the name of the development right now, but there's a number of existing developments that are already there at significantly heavier densities than 1 per 5. I think the intent here is to retain their traditional rural character. So in the smaller areas, smaller densities or tighter densities, whatever you want to use it, smaller lot sizes, that it remain that way, not necessarily that it would proliferate through the other areas. And then when you read the rest of these goals, and when you go through the rest of the policies, it has a tendency to support it in that direction. So by putting a size minimum of 1 per 5 under 2GG1, I think it then nullifies a number of the other policies that are there.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I'm going to speak to that point as well. Where you've already got some cluster homes, like you said on Beard Road, you can see, that's where you really want to make sure that you can contain it. And I would hate to see that get to be too exaggerated there. I mean, I would rather see more homes serviced by the existing infrastructure in that location than to have homes on a 5-acre lot designated right outside of that. So it's when it says consistent with, I've lost it because I can't see it. When it says consistent with that, I would like to see it consistent with the surrounding environment so that the infrastructure is already there and we're not putting roads and pipes and things just to 5 acres or 10 acres to satisfy that requirement.
The fact is that the surrounding environment is slowly but surely being changed so that eventually you're going to have RR2 zoning in these places. With, clustering is fine, but once you get, clustering, once you get infrastructure in there, that clustering changes and you're able to develop it at a higher rate of density. I just don't want to lose sight of the fact that what we're talking here about whether or not we should have limited areas of more intense development. And, we don't have to have that. We could make everything R5. We don't have to set up Lammerts. That isn't something that we're obliged to do, but we're doing it in order to accommodate a lot of the growth that's taken place in this county over the past 20 or 30 years, some of which is inappropriate and some of which leads to sprawl. I don't agree that 5 and 10 acre zoning is going to lead to low density sprawl. I respectfully disagree with Commissioner Onkels. But I prefer that it be in there when we say that rural densities which are compatible with the character of each of the rural areas, that eventually is going to become, medium low density sprawl as opposed to low density sprawl.
Anyone else? Commissioner Belial?
I'm confused, but everybody knows that, so it's okay. But if you have a place like on Beard Road, and it's built out or not built out, those lots are lots of record. And those lots of record are there. And we have to deal with them as lots of record no matter what zone they're in. As soon as you move away from those lots of record, then I think that zoning becomes agriculture, and I think there's 10s and 20s surrounding it, maybe a 5. But that area under the present zoning cannot sprawl out unless something changes. And so I think that a lot of the sprawling out is determined by the zoning that surround these places. And if that zoning is too, normally it's vested. Some of it is infested out there, but in that case, it's against state law the way it reads now, and that's a moot point. So I guess, John, if you'd explain to me what you're really trying to accomplish here, I would like to know it, because it just seems kind of redundant or just unnecessary, because we're tied in by the zoning that's everywhere.
Well, without belaboring the point, and I don't know if, do I have a second for this?
Yes.
Okay, I got a second. I don't think it's going to go forward based on the votes that we've taken so far with regard to this, but I think it is helpful to put a floor underneath the level of development that can't go below. Can't go below one dwelling per 5 acres. I don't think that the two other policies, 2 and 3, necessarily prevent that, and that's why I would like to see it in the preceding policy as a benchmark for this type of development. And that's it.
Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, any other changes to 10 of 29? All in favor of moving on to page 11?
Well, we have to vote on 10.
Just accept page 10.
Let's accept page 10.
Let's accept page 10. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay. Page 11 of 29, any changes, additions, deletions? Do we want to accept page 11?
I move that we accept page 11.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Page 12 of 29, any changes?
Yes, propose to delete 4, policy 2, HH1, item 4. Existing zoning prior to designation as a rural community, except existing zoning may not be a sole criterion for designation. I marked this late last night or maybe early this morning, Gary, so I'm not sure what my train of thought was at that time, but can you explain why we added that and deleted number 3, the area should be separated from other landward designations regardless of type? Oh, I know what it was. This gets rid of the mile requirement.
Correct. There was a spacing requirement originally between type 1 landwards.
Yeah, I propose that we take the, delete item 4 completely and reinsert item 3, saying the area should be separated from other landward designations regardless of type by a minimum of 1 or more miles, except in the guide meridian corridor between Bellingham and Weiser Lake, where historic development patterns support closer spacing.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Commissioner Belial.
So Gary, this mile thing, there was a reason that this was left in there, wasn't there? Isn't there some kind of a GMA kind of problem here that we have to deal with?
No, GMA does not require spacing between type 1 landwards. Type 3 landwards, when GMA describes type 3 landwards, refers to isolated small businesses. So there's, typically counties deal with that by creating distance requirements between type 3 landwards. But a type 1 is not something that's GMA mandated. That's something that was a policy choice by the Planning Commission at that point to keep type 1 landwards from being too close together, again, except for within the guide corridor, where they have been established there already.
It seems to me that was I think we understood it was a GMA mandate to have that happen. I'm pretty sure, or we wouldn't have been so silly.
Is that a true statement?
Well,
No, the
GMA mandate part.
No, I just said it's not a GMA mandate. Like I said, it is a mandate. Well, the word isolated is a mandate for type 3 landwards, and that's why spacing requirements apply to them, and that's why there are still spacing requirements in the type 3 landward criteria.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner
We
Lessa.
determined the 1 mile spacing based on public hearings and work sessions. That was something that was a creation of the existing Planning Commission at that time. I'm pretty sure. I certainly want to see this reinserted because, first of all, if it is, then basically the idea, this Clallam County example you gave in your presentation, you say they allowed a Lammard next to a UGA. That was the Clallam County case? In
Clallam County, it was an issue that wasn't challenged specifically, I believe.
That's right.
There was a particular Lammard, if I recall the hearings board case decision correctly, the hearings board says there's the XYZ Lammard that's located to the ABC urban growth area, and it has boundary issues that were challenged by the appellant, and the hearings board agreed that the boundary issues were the ones kept it out of compliance. When the county came back, solved those boundary issues, then the hearings board said, then that is okay. Again, so without saying yes or no, it's okay to have one next to a UGA.
That's bound to come up because I think there's certainly a body of opinion, if nothing else, that says it's ridiculous to have a Lammard right up next to a UGA. If you want a UGA, then expand the UGA. Don't get your foot in the door with a Lammard. So
and
that's why.
Right, and Samuel just reminded me too that there were a couple of hearings board cases talking about spacing between UGAs, not a mile necessarily, but in certain cases where counties had put them close together, they found that those were not in compliance either. So, but it's not a GMA mandate.
Any other discussion?
Is there a second?
Yes. Will you restate your motion, please?
Yes, to policy 2HH1, item B4, delete the underscored area lines and add under item 4, the area should be separated from other Lammard designations regardless of type by a minimum of 1 or more miles except in the guide meridian corridor between Bellingham and Weiser Lake where historic development patterns support closer spacing.
All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
No.
Nay.
Motion fails.
Moving on to...
Okay, I have a request for a break. So we'll take a 5-minute break, maybe 6. Anyone have any changes, additions, deletions?
Yeah.
For page 12 of 29.
C1, parcels that were intensively developed and characterized by the built environment, including water lines and other utility lines with capacity to serve areas of more intensive uses. This is a contentious issue as far as, and it is in the courts as to what constitutes a built environment, and we've seen by our staff presentation that it's still a forming area of the law. So I suggest we delete and characterized at the end of the parenthesis uses, basically parcels that were intensively developed and characterized by the built environment on July 1st, 1990. I want to stay away from the water line thing, and I mentioned this in the earlier Lammard hearings. Basically, based on my experience in Point Roberts, where basically people were trying to vest their properties by putting in infrastructure that could never be serviced. So that's my motion: is to delete what's in parenthesis on C1.
Is there a second? Any discussion? Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, the motion passes with Lesau and Belial opposed.
No, the motion fails.
I'm sorry, you're right.
Wishful thinking.
With Commissioner Lesau and Belial opposed. Thank you. I'll count on your help.
That's right, Chairman.
Any other changes to 12 of 29? Okay, to approve 12 of 29, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
It passes with Commissioner LaSalle opposing. Okay, 13 of 29. Any changes, additions, deletions? Do we accept page 13 of 29?
Move to accept.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
The motion passes with Commissioner LaSalle opposing.
I got a line through some there, but I'm not exactly sure what the reason was, and it's getting late.
Page 14 of 29. Any changes?
Yes. Item B, additional criteria.
Wait. Item D?
B.
I'm sorry, B as in Bob.
B.
Wait a minute. A rural business designation on a lot or small group of lots containing non-residential uses should be separated from other landmark designations regardless of type by no less than 1/2 mile by public road. That was part of the original, Gary? Okay. Okay. Nothing to add.
Originally, just to clarify, originally there was a distinction between existing businesses and future new businesses.
That's right.
Future businesses would be a mile, and existing was 1/2 mile.
I understand. Okay.
Any other changes to 14?
Move to accept.
Move to accept page 14. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, on to page 15. Any changes, additions, deletions?
Okay.
Is there a motion to accept page 15?
I move to accept.
Second.
Any discussion, any changes? All in favor of accepting page 15?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Page 16 of 29. Any changes? Commissioner Belisle.
Rural businesses, GMA allows county to designate new type 3 environments for, I don't want to get scolded here, for new isolated small-scale businesses. Yeah, to ensure that these uses remain isolated, where am I here?
Do you have a motion or a question?
I do. I'm working
Okay.
on it. Hold on here. It's slow up there. Just had a break.
You want to insert should, designation should include instead of designation include?
No, when I read this,
No,
I
I don't like
had the
shoulds and
idea,
laws
just
at
help me
all.
think through this, guys, that the type 2 environments could be, type 3, could be inserted in different places in the county, and I just wanted to make sure they wouldn't be inserted in agriculture or forest lands. And maybe I'm mistaken here on my whole
But some of
thought.
them, like, some of them are, because the border crossing at Linden, is that not in ag land? And that's
It
a-
is, but it's not a new one. It's been there for, so I just don't want any new ones to be in those places because of the infrastructure that would have to be created to handle it and the destruction of a natural resource. And I don't know if this is where it goes, but somehow or another, I had this little tinge in my neck that says something's
Mr. Davis.
not right.
There is policy 2LL3 on the next page, saying designated resource lands shall not be redesignated as rural business.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, do we want to accept page 16?
I move that we accept page 13.
Second.
Or 16, sorry, 16.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion passes with Commissioner LaSalle opposing. Page 17. Page 17, any changes?
Yeah, on past poorly managed forest practices, what's that mean?
Can you give us a hint? What it was?
Second paragraph under Lake Whatcom. past poorly managed forest practices may have led to significant increases in phosphorus loading to the lake.
Too.
May have led to.
I think it ties.
Do you have a motion?
Yeah. So we got to keep poorly managed forest practices may have led. What was there before may have led? I got a good guess. Have led. Somebody added may have led, right?
So it originally said, it's the last deleted bubble on the right-hand side there, can also lead to. So that sentence originally said, poorly managed forest practices can also lead to.
Okay, I suggested we delete the word may, delete the word past, because past poorly managed doesn't sound grammatical to me. So poorly managed forest practices have led to significant increases in phosphorus loading to the lake. And let's see. I'll expand on that. Poorly managed forest practices and development practices have led to significant increases in phosphorus loading to the lake.
You just added more language. You just added more language. You said and development.
If you stay with the floor, you'll second.
All right, half a loaf. My motion is passed, to eliminate past, start the last sentence. Poorly managed forest practices have led to significant increases in phosphorus loading to the lake, which is just a reaffirmation of the science. That's my motion.
I'll second it. It's been a long night, and John needs to win one, and this is safe for everybody.
Commissioner Rainey?
I'd like to offer, and Tim will correct me, but I'd like to offer a friendly amendment. We delete the whole thing. Sounds like speculation to me and not science. Past poorly managed forest practices may be led to significant increase in phosphorus loaded in the lake. Doesn't sound like science to me. I'd like to offer we delete the whole sentence.
Actually, I would prefer to accept that as a friendly amendment and delete the whole thing, starting with a. You're suggesting starting everything saying a significant cause of?
I think past poorly managed forest practices, whole thing.
Okay, you want to, if you wish to delete that and keep the rest of the verbiage intact, I'll accept that as a friendly amendment.
I'd like to suggest that you change the motion rather than go back and forth with a friendly amendment until we have a chance to go back over our rules.
Is there an amendment on the floor? Is there a motion on the table?
Yeah.
And the motion is?
And the motion is?
The motion is to add, poorly managed forest practices have led to significant increases in phosphorus loading to the lake.
And that motion was seconded, and that's the motion on the table.
That's the motion on the table. And if you need to make changes to the wording of that, you can. But if you want to make a different motion to delete it, we've got to deal with this one first.
Okay.
But he can make a second. He can make a friendly to this, and then we
No,
can decide if we want to.
we all have to agree to the friendly amendment. He can't be the only one that agrees. Because we now.
Me and him have to. And you guys.
No, we all have to agree now.
The motion's on the
Is
table.
there a ruling?
We've
Yeah,
never done this in 8 years.
He's right?
He's right.
The Silver Beach Neighborhood Association versed me well in Robert's rules.
Thank you.
So we now own your motion.
And that's the motion on the table.
And that's the motion on the table. We either accept it or reject it. And if we own it, then we have to agree to friendly amendments.
Okay.
So, and that's just a fairness issue. And can I speak to this now that I've got the floor? This is just one instance of what may be the science on phosphorus loading on the lake. And to single out this one practice, to me, is futile. I don't know.
That is forest practice?
Yeah,
As opposed to residential development?
There's 3 or 4 here.
Yep.
There's 3.
There's been a lot of poorly practiced.
It's like seaplanes.
You've been talking to Wendy.
Commissioner,
All over town.
Commissioner Hanku?
Comment, I think the only thing we can change is whatever it's in red or underlined. So I don't think we can delete the entire sentence. I think we can only change the wordage. So I think we should vote on the proposed motion, and let's move on.
Well, let's get rid of that
So you withdraw the motion?
then.
No.
You can vote on it.
Okay.
Vote on.
Okay.
What is?
Restate the motion, please, one more time.
Poorly managed forest practices have led to significant increases in phosphorus loadings in the lake.
That motion was seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Okay, moving on, a significant cause.
We're in the middle of a vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. Haven't been voted down yet?
Well,
Almost.
You start talking.
You started talking instead of voting.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The motion was made. The motion was seconded. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
No.
Yeah.
Motion fails.
Okay,
Motion fails.
significant cause of declining oxygen levels may be from residential development in the watershed. Commissioner Rainey has indicated that he may be...
Microphone.
I'm sorry. That he may be in agreement with that. Is that correct?
We can't change it.
He can't change
We
that.
can't change it. Move on.
Only the-
Okay, so I want to change may be to has been attributed to, which is more accurate, I believe. So I wish to change that sentence. A significant cause of declining oxygen levels has been attributed to residential development in the watershed. That's my motion.
Is there a second? Any discussion?
Yeah, I actually, the science does support that as a valid premise.
Quick vote.
Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
No.
Nay.
Motion fails with Lesau, Belial, and Bell.
In favor.
We need to
Okay.
vote to accept.
Okay, are we going to vote to accept
Didn't say the
page 17?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Commissioner Lesau opposes. Page 18 of 29. There's not too much there. Any changes?
Move to accept.
Move to accept page
Second.
18. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Page 18. Okay, page 19.
Move to accept.
Second?
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Page 20.
Yes. Policy 2MM-10, suggested language is encourage the location of public services such as schools, libraries, and post offices within rural communities that would likely reduce the vehicle miles traveled within the watershed. But we deleted, do not allow lots smaller than 5 acres to be created within rural centers in the Lake Whatcom watershed. Is that correct, Gary? Somebody's deleted that. That's in your bubble.
Correct.
Why did we do that? Or why did council or whoever did it do it?
Let me check my notes.
Maybe a council member, Brenner or Crawford, could.
Wasn't that done at the same time you changed the language for the, for 2MM10 at the work session when you were discussing Sudden Valley?
No, 2MM10 was a different issue. That's, that was done, the original language that you see deleted there, encourage the location of public facilities. That's a policy that was in the Planning Commission recommendation, and the idea behind that was Bellingham Public School District was looking at locating a school in there, which would reduce trips to town for people taking kids to school. However, there was some concerns about the broadness of that language. Potentially, public facilities could mean a lot of different things. So the idea was to limit that to the intent being schools, libraries, post offices, those sorts of public services, in cases where they would likely reduce the.
Didn't Councilwoman Bremer suggest that language?
I think it was a collaborative effort. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there a motion?
Yes, my motion is to leave that there, given that explanation, that's fine, and introduce policy 2. No, I can't do that, can I? I can't introduce 2NN10 that was deleted. I have to substitute 2NN10 that was deleted for 2MM10, which is brand new, right?
No, you can add it.
I can?
Yes.
No, there would be two separate.
Becky's shaking her head.
Two separate motions. One was deleted, so you have full rights to that, I would assume.
You bet.
Okay, when this is defeated, then can I add 2NN10? I can do that?
Separate motion.
Okay, as a separate motion? Okay, fine. So
The motion is?
I withdraw the motion because I'm generally in agreement with what they're trying to do there. Now, 2MM11, add, do not allow additional lots smaller than 5 acres to be created within rural centers in the Lake Whatcom watershed. That's my motion.
Is there a second? Discussion?
Yeah, I'm going to speak against that just because I know the development standards today are better, and we can do capture techniques on building lots that have allowed some amazing environmental benefits for capturing and reusing water on site. So I don't see the reason for limiting that.
Commissioner Honkoop.
And the other thing I'd like to comment on, it talks about created within rural centers. It's specifically referring to that, and the idea is, of course, to keep the density in the rural centers. It's not addressing areas outside of rural centers, which we've, I think, now called rural communities.
But we're talking about the Lake Whatcom watershed.
Right.
Not rural centers in general.
No, it's specific to the lake. So that's by putting 2NN10 back in, you're only talking about disallowing lots smaller than 5 acres in the rural center, which would need to be amended to rural community. And that's where we want the lots. We want them in the higher density areas, not in the rural areas.
Mr. Davis?
Just wanted to clarify that. That would affect only, the Sudden Valley is the only Type 1 Lammard Rural Center proposed for within the Lake Whatcom watershed. And we do have another policy in here about that. Basically, there are some R5A areas, 5-acre zoning areas remaining within the Sudden Valley area. That's mostly the golf course and some common areas. The rest of it's all platted out at fairly small lots, fairly high density. So whether that provision is in there or not doesn't seem to make a whole lot of difference. I think that's probably why it was taken out.
So you're saying it's not necessary? Gary, going to your map of Sudden Valley that we went through earlier, showing the rural community suburban enclave, do I understand that this Lammard that's been proposed by council would run along the shore of Lake Whatcom, whereas the one that was proposed before would not, and that this reinsertion of what has been deleted would basically prevent 1-acre lots on the shores of Lake Whatcom?
It's already there.
Here's the difference right here.
Here's the difference. these parcels and a collection of parcels along the waterfront that were developed in 1990 are added to the Sudden Valley. I'm looking for a policy that we have in there about areas that are existing 5 acres in, I think it may be in the Type 1 Lammard criteria now that I think about it. Or not the criteria, but the description of Type 1 Lammards in policy 2JJ. And maybe Sam, you remember where this is. It's our 5 acre. There's a policy that says areas that remain 5 acre zoning within the boundaries of a rural community should not be JJ5. Yeah, 2JJ5 on page 15. Lands inside rural community designation boundaries that are within low-density residential zones, in other words, 1 residence per 5 acre or less density, or resource zones or federally owned should not be rezoned to allow more intensive uses and densities. And this is generally in play in places like Sudden Valley, also in Point Roberts, and I believe in Glacier, where to draw the boundary around a whole area, some R5A areas were included within that. And this is just to say that the intensive development, even though it's within the Lammard boundary, shall not spread into the 5 acre areas, the 5 acre zoned areas, so that limits and minimizes growth within those boundaries.
Gary, as I understand it, I'm trying to get this gizmo to work. I swiped this from a colleague at a PowerPoint presentation last week. I know you're real fancy, but the red light's going, but I can't see. Anyhow, that finger up there on the shore.
There it is. There it is.
No, it's somebody else's.
That's me.
There you go. Thank you. Serves me right. That area there has been added to the Sudden Valley Lammard, and whereas it was not part of the recommendation from the previous planning commission.
Correct.
Okay, so what we're doing, if this, does this comp plan policy relate to the amount of density that one can put in that finger of land, that is 1 acre lots developed on the shores of Lake Whatcom?
Well, these are already very small lots. These have been zoned RR2 for a long time, which is 1 per half acre. It's these parcels in here, the bigger ones. There's an old landing strip here. This is the golf course. These are areas that are zoned R5A right now, where this policy 2JJ5 talks about those areas are not, even though they're within the boundary of the Lammard, they're not opened up to rezoning for more intensive development, increasing the intensity within the Lammard. So I think that takes care of that policy 2NN, old 2NN10, talking about do not allow additional lots smaller than 5 acres within the watershed.
Okay, in the interest of speeding things along, I'll accept that. I only understood about half of your explanation, but I know how I'm going to vote, and that's not your fault, that's my fault.
Will you restate your motion?
Motion is to add 2MM11 to state do not allow additional lots smaller than 5 acres to be created within rural centers in the Lake Whatcom watershed. Which is been seconded.
All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? No.
Nay.
Motion fails. Page 20 of 29.
Move to accept.
Okay. All in favor of page 20? All in favor, say aye. Opposed?
No.
Page 21. Any changes?
I move to accept page 21.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of accepting page 21?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, page 22. Any changes? Motion to accept page 22.
I move to accept it.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor to accept page 22, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, page 23. Any changes?
Very bottom of the page in 23, allows one definition rural, allows one dwelling unit per 5 or 10 acres or a higher density where that density has been established. Does that mean historically has been established?
Yes, what we did was to do an analysis of the areas that are currently zoned, say R2A, and find out what the existing average lot size is in those areas. Some of those areas, the average lot size, because it's been zoned R2A for a long time, some of those areas, the density has been established in there at levels very close to 1 per 2 acres. Some of them go higher than that within the Lake Whatcom watershed. So in those areas, we've documented that those higher densities exist, and so those are areas where it's proposed to leave the R2A in place, but not have it be in a Lambert. Say that's the established rural density in those areas. Now, some R2A areas have not developed to that density, and those are not recommended for retaining 2-acre zoning. Those are proposed for R5A zoning.
But you've deleted, but encouraging 10-acre development. In other words, you're saying allow one dwelling unit per 5 or 10 acres, but encouraging 10-acre development with less traffic noise, et cetera, et cetera. You know, this, you're talking about increasing the acreage by about 50%, and, you know, right from the jump. And, you know, this thing's going to be litigated, sure as can be. And, you know, a higher density where that density has been established, I mean, if it's, you know, one dwelling for every, you know, 1 or 2 acres, we're basically back right where we started from. So, you know, we've been willing to, you know, give a little back and forth and, you know, lean a little bit. But, you know, I would encourage my colleagues, I'm talking to you, Gary, but, you know, colleagues, that, you know, we should encourage, you know, 10-acre development in rural, not smaller development. So that's the reason I'm moving to delete that verbiage between the parentheses.
Commissioner Belisle?
So, Gary, just what does this apply to? I mean, well, let me rephrase that. So if there's demonstrated R2, for instance, and some of the lots aren't vested, say there's a 5 or 10 in there, they get to go to R2 even though they're not vested, or is there such a thing exist? Maybe it doesn't exist.
Well, an example, if you recall the Lake Samish map, at the very south end of the lake, there's an area that is not proposed to go into the Lake Samish Lammert, but instead is proposed to have a rural designation, but to retain its R2A zoning. That's an area where the average lot size is a little over 2 acres already. Now, there are some lots in there, that'd be down in here. There are some lots in there that are larger than, well, 4 acres. If it's 4 acres, it could potentially subdivide under 2-acre zoning, but it is in an area where 2-acre, 1 unit per 2-acre type densities are established. And so that's the argument in favor of having some areas in the rural designation retain the 2-acre zoning.
And then, like, there's places in the county that have, for instance, there's some ag land that has, well, an ag 40 around it that's got some R2. This doesn't apply to that. And there's some places on the guide that are R2.
Well, those places are probably located within Lammerts.
No, they're not.
Oh, I'm talking, okay, I see what you're saying. The Weiser Lake East, which will be the last map on the, actually, I'm not sure it's in this one because it didn't change, but you can see it here, east of the Weiser Lake Landward, where Weiser Lake Road goes across to hit the guide. This is an area where, once again, the average lot size in there is approaching 2 acres. Just a little above 2 acres, so it's an area where that's proposed to retain its R2A zoning.
How about north of King Tut on the guide?
That is an area on the pole and guide map that is proposed because it doesn't have that type of average lot size. That's proposed to go to 1/5 zoning, but with an overlay. So if a property is nearby a bunch of other properties that are developed down to 2 acres, they may be able to reduce their minimum lot size. But the base density is 1/5 acres. That's this area right here between King Tut and the Pole Road landward.
Yeah, it doesn't look like a lot of R2 in there, huh? I mean,
Well, zoned R2A right now, there are some 2-acre lots in here, but it's a real mixture. It's in the average, I forget exactly what the average is, but that's an area where it's proposed to go to an overlay situation. I'm not sure that anybody would actually be able to take advantage of that overlay situation in there. It'll depend on the location of lots and the sizes within 500 feet.
because on the east side of that section, it's farm, and it's R2.
Any other discussion? Okay, would you restate the motion, your motion, for a vote? 23.
Last line, change rural to the definition stating that allows 1 dwelling per 5 or 10 acres, but encouraging 10-acre development with less traffic noise, et cetera, which continues on to page 24.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
No.
Nay.
Motion fails. Okay, do we want to approve page 23?